Can y'all see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Well, welcome back. Now we're into Module 2, and what you've all been waiting for is the action research section. So we're going to get right to work. I've recorded. So before we get started, my stomach growled when I was looking back at this. If you could eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Just add that to the chat. And if Bettina or Sandy can read out some of the things, because in this mode, I can't see what your favorite foods are.
Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Chocolate. Ice creams. Reese's. French fries. Oh, y'all gonna make us hungry. Crab cakes. Steak. Chips and cheese. French fries. Zaxby's. Salads. Sushi. Grapes. Okay.
Okay, well, I'm real hungry now.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll move on to look at the schedule, because after we finish this module, we'll get to go eat. Maybe we can eat some of those things. We have 75 minutes for this module, and I hope it will fit within that. I'll do my darndest, and let's keep moving. So action research. Here are the learning targets, and they are also on your digital handout. I can define action research. I can explain the purpose of action research. I can describe a model of action research. I can explain the process of action research. So, what is action research? I want you to read this quote to yourself. So, practitioners who engage in action research inevitably find it to be an empowering experience. Action research has positive effects for many reasons. There's relevancy. Obviously, the most important is that action research is always relevant to the participants. Relevance is guaranteed because the focus of each research project is determined by the researchers, who are also the primary consumers of the findings. Another reason is improved effectiveness. Perhaps even more important is the fact that action research helps educators be more effective at what they care most about, their teaching and the development of their students. Seeing students grow is probably the greatest joy educators can experience. When teachers have convincing evidence that their work has made a real difference in their students' lives, the countless hours and endless efforts of teaching seem worthwhile. So, we're going to use the Ready, Set, Go protocol. And what we're going to do is I want you to think about, what do you think action research looks like and what's involved? So in your mind, before you add to the chat, and I'm going to tell you when to start, you're going to think of your answers when I say ready. Then when I say set, you're going to type in the chat, but do not press enter until I say go. So let me read those again. When I say ready, think of your answers to these questions on the screen. When I say set, you're going to start typing in the chat. When I say go, you hit enter. All right, so ready, set, go. And Sandy or Bettina, if you'll read some of their responses.
Yeah, they're going by quickly. All right, let's see. I'm going to do my best.
Just pick some.
I will. Let me get past the food again. Looking at the impact a practice has on a group, finding a problem that needs a solution, identifying the problem, finding ways to solve it based on data, actively finding a solution for a better outcome, a strategy, researching while you are in the moment, probably interventions, maybe action research looks like data collection, improving myself in coaching and teachers instruction, interventions, intentions, diagnose strengths and weaknesses, gathering data, and defining a situation or method that merits a closer look. You zone in on skills and how to assess, collect the data, and make further steps.
Smart ladies out there. Okay. So now I'm going to show you a video of what do you notice about action research. So as you're watching this, make a list of words, phrases, or ideas that help you clarify what action research is. And you can just put this in your journal. You don't have to put it in the chat so that you have it to revisit. So I'm going to have to come out of here. Oh, that's right. I got to unshare. Ugh. Okay, do that. Do that. And let me know if you can hear it.
Teaching is a craft. It's both art and a science, which is why great teachers always experiment and make tons of mistakes. But how do you know what's actually working? Well, one option is action research. Here you can identify a question, test out a strategy, gather data, and determine if it works. The end result is something dynamic, innovative, and tied directly to your classroom. Action research dissolves the barrier between the participants and the researchers. In other words, the teacher actively participates in the situation while also conducting the research. There are many action research frameworks, but they generally follow a similar process. You start out in phase 1, planning for research. Here you begin with inquiry, where you define a specific research question. It needs to be something that can actually be tested. Next, you conduct a literature review to gain a deeper understanding of the topic. Finally, you move into the design process, where you determine your data methods, consider ethical issues, get the required permissions, create deadlines, and set up the systems. Next, you move into the action phase. This is where you engage in multiple cycles of experimentation and data collection. Your data collection might include qualitative data like observations, artifacts, and interviews, or quantitative data like rubric scores, surveys, or achievement data. Afterward, you move to analysis. You'll often start by organizing the data with charts or graphs and looking for specific trends. You might also discuss it with peers, free write in a journal, or create a cluster map before eventually writing out your results. Finally, you have your conclusion. This is where you share your research with the world and reflect on your own practice. This will ultimately lead to newer questions, and the cycle will continue as you refine your craft as a better, more creative teacher.
All right, so be thinking about those words, phrases that you jotted down, and I'm going to let you know that I did put this link for this video in the bringbacks for November, so if you want to revisit it, I put that you could rewatch it if you wanted to revisit this video, because I think it's just a great video. So now that you've had some time to think about the definitions of action research as well as ideas for research to practice, go to your digital handout and you will see a link where the important links are under Module 2. It will say Back Channel. If you'll click on that and go into the Back Channel and add your noticings, wonderings, and connections to the Back Channel now.
Okay, y'all are doing a good job.
Okay, give you just a few more seconds because we're going to revisit this more than once today. All right. So, what is action research in education? Action research is any systematic inquiry conducted by teacher researchers in the teaching/learning environment to gather information about how their particular schools operate, how they teach, and how well their students learn. And that's Jeffrey Mills' quote. He has a book, or she has a book called Action Research, a guide for the teacher researcher. So, 3 purposes for action research. I want you to read this slide, and then I'm going to give you a little definition for each one. Building the reflective practitioner. When individual teachers make a personal commitment to systematically collect data on their work, they are embarking on a process that will foster continuous growth and development. When each lesson is looked on as empirical investigation into factors affecting teaching and learning, and when reflections on the findings from each day's work inform the next day's instruction, teachers can't help but develop greater mastery of the art and science of teaching. In this way, the individual teachers conducting action research are making continuous progress in developing their strengths as reflective practitioners. Number 2, making progress on school-wide priorities. Increasingly, schools are focusing on strengthening themselves and their programs through the development of common foci and a strong sense of esprit de corps, a feeling of pride and fellowship, and common loyalty shared by the members of the particular group. Focusing the combined time, energy, and creativity of a group of committed professionals on a single pedagogical issue will inevitably lead to program improvements, as well as to the school becoming a center of excellence. As a result, when a faculty chooses to focus on one issue and all the teachers elect to enthusiastically participate in action research on that issue, significant progress on the school-wide priorities cannot help but occur. Number 3, building professional cultures. School faculties who wish to transform themselves into communities of learners often empower teams of colleagues who share a passion about one aspect of teaching and learning to conduct investigations into that area of interest and then share what they've learned with the rest of the school community. This strategy allows an entire faculty to develop and practice the discipline that Peter Senge labeled team learning. In these schools, multiple action research inquiries occur simultaneously, and no one is held captive to another's priority. Yet everyone knows that all the work ultimately will be shared and will consequently contribute to the organizational learning. So thinking about these 3 purposes for action research, which purpose for research interests you? Add that to the chat, please. And Sandy, if you'll just tell me which ones are showing up. And y'all can put number 1, number 2, number 3 if that makes it easier so you don't have to type the whole purpose out.
Reflective practitioner 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2, 2, 2.
Okay, good. It's getting y'all thinking, and you can start seeing who's kind of interested in the same type of action research you are.
3, 1, 2.
Okay, so bridge the research to practice divide. For decades, there's been a divide between educational research and practice. Sometimes the blame is placed on teachers for not following research-based strategies or not being trained well enough to read the literature. Just as frequently, the blame is placed on researchers for not A, studying topics important to teachers, B, writing them so they make sense, and C, providing useful findings. However, all of these suggestions, as useful as they may be, take research as an activity radically different from what teachers do. Research alone does not change practice. Let me say that again. Research alone does not change practice. This is true in every field, be it engineering, education, or law. Studies are not enough to shift the day-to-day practice and habits of professionals. Just putting information into someone's hands does not help them understand how to use that information to improve their work. Part of the reason is human nature. Change is difficult. Another reason is that it takes work to make a study relevant to what's happening on the ground. Plus, practitioners are often skeptical of experts. So, when do you use education research? When you have a problem in education practice? When educators want to reflect on their own practices? When you want to address school-wide problems? When teachers want to improve their practices? When educators want to participate in a research group project? So now get your journal, and as a coach, have you facilitated informal action research in your coaching work? Give some examples in your journal. And after I've given you a few minutes to do that, I'd like a few of you to just unmute and share some of your examples if you have had this experience. And you notice it says informal action research, because we know you haven't probably done formal research at this point. So if someone wants to unmute one of their examples, or you can put it in the chat if you're shy. But y'all know each other from last year, so we need to be a little more brave. We're going to be action researchers together.
I think last year, well, and probably the year before, we've really been focusing on writing workshop. So we kind of dove in and looked at the practices that were taking place in our writing workshops and did a lot of research on best practices and studied a few different books, including the Jennifer Saravallo writing strategies. And then we went around to different classrooms and collected artifacts of the students' work and had the teachers reflect on progress. And even at the end of the year, kind of give a final conclusion. And we kind of ended abruptly last year, but to kind of give a conclusion on, you know, our steps and actions that had taken, had they seen improvements in their writing workshop and the writing quality in their students, or if they would do something differently this year. And so we're kind of monitoring and adjusting this year to kind of continue what we had worked on last year.
That's great. Someone else.
We've had to take a good hard look at why our high flyers don't end up growing as much as they need to grow. And so I've asked the teachers to look at their specific learning profiles to see exactly where those children are and where they need to be. And it was just an eye-opener. We are teaching often way below where those children are. And so hence we don't have the growth that we need to have. So I'm just trying to encourage them to continue to do that.
That's wonderful, because they do get forgotten a whole lot because they just kind of sit there and do what we ask them to do. Maybe one more?
Our teachers felt like our children weren't growing at the rate they wanted and just being natural inquirers. So just through observing, and the teachers came up with the idea of just going through and trying to find out if they're asking higher level questioning. Just using the Bloom's questioning the level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we noticed that some of the questioning stuck around 2, sometimes 3, very rarely 4. So I just went in with the teachers who asked me to come in. Not all of them last year. I just took the ones who were really wanting me to come in to coach. And we met, discussed questioning, planned the questions of how we could ask it a different way to have the children thinking a little deeper. But out of the 5 teachers, their scores really did show a huge improvement. Now we ended rather quickly, but just in the, I think we were able to do it for 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. In that 3 to 4 weeks, I could tell a huge difference.
And see, it doesn't take that long sometimes when you get intentional about what you're doing. That's fabulous. Okay, so now that we've talked about action research, oh, somebody else want to share? Go ahead. Go ahead. All right, well, we'll move on. Go back to the back channel. Now that you've done some more thinking about definitions of action research, as well as ideas for research to practice, add your noticings, wonderings, and connections on the back channel. I'll give you a few minutes just to add to. Okay, and as I said, we will come back to this again. Whoop. So this slide shows that there has been a movement in teachers being more intentional about the formalizing a process of action research. Shifts have been made from a one-size-fits-all professional development to a more tailored teacher and student-initiated inquiry. So you can see from the 70s up to the 2000s that we're moving away from those one and done little make and take in-service days to now more teacher and school focused inquiries with research. Take a look at this action research model. Unmute and tell us what you notice in this model.
It just cycles around. I mean,
it doesn't end, does it?
No, it doesn't end. Yeah, which is part of everything we do in life.
Right. So think about your example you wrote about in your journal about, as a coach, have you facilitated informal action research in your coaching work? Did you incorporate any of these components into your informal action research? You might want to just note which pieces you did do when you were doing that informal research in your notebook. And if you want to add any of that to the chat, some connections you made. When they add anything to the chat, Sandy can read it out loud.
I don't see anything there. We did a lot of planning and observing in our research on Writer's Workshop from Lindsay. From Monica, every step is important, but reflection is huge. If a teacher can reflect, we all learn. Angie, it's important to take time to reflect.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on. So it's a dynamic process, a dynamic process of spiraling back and forth among reflection, data collection, and action. And I was going to say that, you know, sometimes when you reflect and you get to the data, you go back to reflection before you ever go to the action. And we have to make sure we at least get to that action so then we have more data to then reflect upon. It does not follow a linear pattern, and it does not follow a causal sequence from a problem to action. So thinking about your example you put in your journal, was your process dynamic? And you can just put yes or no, or write this was dynamic in your notes just for you to remember when you're moving forward in action research this year that it is a dynamic process. So the problem is only one phase in which to enter. You can enter by identifying the problem, collecting data, and then identifying the problem, evaluating existing data, and taking action. So going back to your example in your journal, where was your point of entry? And just note point of entry in your journal for you to be able to refer back to. Now you're moving into your process as a researcher. Action researchers are explorers in the cause of understanding. There you are, looking out into the future of your action research. So what are your puzzlements? Here are some examples. I'll let you read those to yourself. So as you see, research questions can cover the gamut from working with administrators, working with teachers, working with students. But one thing I think we need to keep in mind is no matter what that research is, it does eventually affect student achievement. Because working with the administrators may help the teachers feel more supportive, which helps them in the classroom, which will affect the students. So no matter what we're doing, it's a trickle down to students. So now I'm going to hold my breath and hope that we can get into breakout rooms. We're going to use the same breakout rooms we used before. There's a link in Module 2 that says breakout rooms, and it will take you back to that same one. But before you go, I want you to brainstorm what ideas do you have for action research. And then when you go into your breakout rooms, y'all are going to use the Padlet that you were using earlier. No, you haven't did that. I have a Padlet now. Sorry, that was the back channel. Let me repeat. I have done a Padlet. There's a link for it under the breakout rooms. So y'all will need to get the Padlet open when you get into the breakout rooms and discuss all that we've talked about with action research and post 2 ideas that you have for action research. Include your name so we can see what you're thinking It doesn't, you're not committed to this yet, but it's just, what are you thinking right now? And after having conversations with your group, you'll have a better idea of some ideas that other people are thinking. So we're going to go into the breakout rooms, open up the Padlet, have some discussion, and then post 2 ideas you're interested in, and be sure you put your name beside it or in it or wherever. And if there are more of you that have it, just put all your names for the same idea. Is that clear as mud? All right, if you will go to the breakout rooms, and I'll check to see where everybody is. Sandy, Bettina, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, they're all in there, and of course, I forgot to tell them when to come back, but some of them are larger and some of them have people that are more talkers than others, but I'm gonna give them about 5 minutes,
Okay. Yeah.
and then we may have to go in there and divide and conquer to tell them to come back.
Okay. Just let me know.
Okay. I about died. Marshall came in here right when I was presenting, and he went, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Presenting, presenting." I think this is good to give them time to talk.
Well, that's what they've been wanting to do.
Yeah, and the rest of this isn't that much. I may give them a little more than that.
Denise says they can hear us, so we need to be quiet.
Okay. Sorry.
I got tons of little cans I keep bringing from home. Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're bringing everybody back. So we'll get back together, get started when I get the thumbs up from Bettina.
Okay. A and B, okay.
Yep, I saw that on the text.
Hello?
Okay, all righty. So now let me share my, I think I'm already shared. I just have to find it again. Can y'all see this
Not yet.
now?
No.
Okay, I must have, okay, I must have to share. Okay, there we go.
Yes.
So I hope y'all enjoyed having some time to talk with your colleagues and to share some ideas. And we will be looking at that Padlet during lunch. And I'm excited to give y'all that time. And we are going to try to work in opportunities like that moving forward because I know it's so important to have the opportunity to talk. So now we're going to use the See, Think, Wonder protocol to examine the ideas around action research topics. So I'm going to read you the directions and give you an example, and then I'm going to let you pull that Padlet back up and use the See, Think, Wonder protocol on the Padlet. So you will name something that you see, something you think, something you wonder. The routine works best when a student responds by using the three stems together. So you do it all together. You're not doing it separately. So let me give you an example. I see my calendar. I think I have a meeting tomorrow. I wonder if it will go well. So that's how you do that. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to go back to the Padlet and look and have a see, think, wonder with what you are looking at on that Padlet. So I'm going to start the timer for 2 minutes. So you may go now. Okay, if we can bring that back, bring it to a close. Does anyone want to just unmute and share what you put? What you see, what you think, what you wonder?
I want to, I saw lots of things about phonics instruction in the younger grades. And that's kind of a question that I have myself, is what kind of impact that's going to be as far as reading scores go and whatnot moving forward. I don't think there's been a lot of explicit phonics instruction in the school that I'm at. And I would just like to see, or I wonder what that would look like as far as score results go.
Okay, good, great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so the action research process. We'll let you look at those steps. And as you can see, number 1 is highlighted because that's our focus for today, selecting a focus. Educational action research can be engaged in by a single teacher, by a group of colleagues who share an interest in a common problem, or by the entire faculty of a school. Whatever the scenario, action research always involves the same 7-step process. These 7 steps, which become an endless cycle for the inquiring teacher, are the following, all 7. You can find more about this process in a link that I put in your handout. It's called Chapter 1, What is Action Research? So you'll have that to revisit as you move forward. Selecting a focus. Choose your adventure. What elements of your practice or what aspect of student learning do you wish to investigate? In Chapter 1 from that book I told you about, What is Action Research? The action research process begins with serious reflection directed toward identifying a topic or topics worthy of a busy teacher's time. Considering the incredible demands on today's classroom teachers, no activity is worth doing unless it promises to make the central part of a teacher's work more successful and satisfying. Thus, selecting a focus, the first step in the process, is vitally important. Selecting a focus begins with the teacher researcher or the team of action researchers asking, what elements of your practice or what aspect of student learning do you wish to investigate? So step 1, kickstart your thinking. Use the following template to guide thinking about possible areas of research. So step 1, you've made a list and generated your puzzlements. Now in your journal, specify, what is your question? What are your puzzlements? What are you thinking right now? I'm going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes to jot down what you're thinking right now about your focus for your research. Selecting a topic. And after you've jotted in your journal, go back to the same breakout room you were in earlier and collaborate with other people. Because after we've listed and generated ideas, we need to get specific and we need to have time to collaborate. So go back into your breakout rooms and come back in 5 minutes. That would be 11:25. Can you see my screen?
No.
I guess when you go out of it to do something, it just,
Yeah, that's what happened to me earlier.
oh, okay, there, it should be there.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, it's 11:25, so we're gonna move on. So by November, you need to state, be able to identify your topic and limit your topic. Be specific as to what you're considering. So that's your quote unquote homework for next month, to be able to have chiseled down your thinking and to go deeper into what you want to do specifically. So now before we go to lunch, I want you to, before you go to the back channel, but I want you, you've done thinking about the definitions of action research. So add your noticings, wonderings, connections on the back channel. If you feel like you didn't complete your conversations, you can go back into the breakout rooms, but we are going to break for lunch at 11:45. And I just want you to see this quote before you go into the Padlet, not the Padlet, sorry, the back channel. And if you want to go back again. But Richard Sager says, as long as teaching remains a profession where isolation is the norm, where the knowledge that informs practice comes from outside the classroom, and where the quality control officers are removed from the classroom, teaching will be more like a blue-collar job than an intellectual professional pursuit. So please add to the back channel for action research. And if you would like, you can get back into your breakout rooms to talk, but we are going to break for lunch. And then we will be back at 12:30. If you have any questions, add them to the chat. And we do have office hours from 12:45 to 1:45 this afternoon if you need to talk to us about something. So have a nice lunch.